Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. Not only is this week's guest an awesome diatonic and chromatic player, but he's also an amazing band leader, singer, drummer, keyboard player, and lap steel player. Jason Ricci describes him as a fiery, open-minded, unique, and musical harmonica player. He is the sensational Hank Shreve. Welcome to the podcast, Hank. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. So whereabouts are you tuning in from?
I'm in Springfield, Oregon, and yes, that is the same as where The Simpsons takes place, believe it or not. And it's just outside of Eugene, and it is 2 hours south of Portland.
So. That's cool. So is it kind of urban or more rural?
Where I'm at is pretty urban, yeah. Uh-huh. It's got a mix of everything. That's why I love living here. You know, if you want to go to the beach, it's about an hour away. If you want to go to the mountains, you know, it's a cool place. It's a little tricky for touring and things like that. Well, I guess that goes for everywhere nowadays, but I mean, it's a little tricky because you're, you know, right in the corner of the map. So it makes kind of getting out to the East Coast and all those places a little tricky, but it's a beautiful area and I'm really fortunate to be living here.
Yeah, it's very high on our list of places to visit when we get out of lockdown. We've done a little bit of the East Coast and kind of New England area and really loved it, but we want to make it over to the West Coast. And I've heard all sorts of things from various people from either coast, you know, about the West Coast being the best coast and all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of rivalry, I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, but you know, that's just me. But you know, the East Coast is really cool too. I've only been to the East Coast a couple times, but I really loved it. I just love, you know, the attitudes are so different, you know, because over here in the West Coast, you know, a lot of people are, you know, like, oh, whatever, you know, but you know, East Coast is more like, hey, you get out of my freaking way, will you? You know, and it's like, it's just like, I love that, you know, and it's very cool. Nice. That's why, you know, people from Chicago interest me too, because it's like they have kind of both mentalities, you know, and they have, and the accent is very, you know, specific and stuff. But
and
yeah,
do you think
getting off track.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Do you think that translates into players and styles? Do you think there's a kind of difference between both sides of the country?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially like here on the West Coast, I've noticed there's a heavy presence of, you know, of swing. Like there's a lot of like elements of swing music, jazz, and there's a lot of soul elements too on this. Like, you know, we'll probably talk more in depth about, you know, different players later on, but you know, you think in like, you know, guys like Paul DeLay or William Clark or Norton Buffalo, you know, those are my three like top idols. I got a lot of idols, but those guys are my main guys. But you know, they don't sound like anybody else, you know, and there's just a different vibe. Yeah. And I don't really have a straight ahead answer for that one. Sorry. But you know, I absolutely hear that there's just a difference throughout the, you know, the States, and it's really cool. It's fascinating, you know. It
really is. Cause I think, you know, a lot of people come to harmonica and any instrument, and you know, that when they want to study blues, and they're just like, yeah, it's blues, and you kind of go a little bit deeper, and like, oh, there's Chicago blues, and you go a little bit deeper, and there's the kind of Piedmont style and the West Coast thing, and like it's just so different, and it's kind of fascinating that, you know, basically it starts from a very similar language, but it's so broad. Which is kind of cool, because I've definitely made blues the genre that I'm most interested in studying, and I feel that there aren't so many genres where you could make a lifetime out of it.
Yes, yeah, that I'm right there with you. Is you know, blues has always been the genre that I'm most drawn to, and then I guess I identify with the most. You know, I love kind of like what I was talking about with Jason a while ago. Is I've always, not just straight up blues, but I've always been drawn to like bluesy styled music too, like certain kinds of rock and roll, you know, especially when I was at a young age, really young age, I really liked any kind of music that had harmonica into it, in it, you know, and so I just anything that's bluesy, I really liked, you know, because there's just that the heart and soul aspect of it, and it's you eventually you see that like it's the backbone of all American music essentially,
Hmm.
you know, and it really you can see where a lot of other styles have come out of that. So I have a lot of, you know, I have a few students where, you know, they're not really into blues a whole lot. You know, they think it's cool, but it's not really, they're like, well, I'm not really, I kind of just want to learn how to play. I'm not really interested in like being Little Walter or what, or whatever. Excuse me. But you know, I always say like, you check it out though, because like you know, there's a lot of cool stuff you can learn from blues stuff, you
Hmm.
know. So, but yeah, it's funny how that whole thing works. But I kind of forgot what I was talking about. But
I think we were
I
just
do that sometimes.
we
Yeah,
we all love the blues. I think that's the main theme. um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, it's true. I get that every so often with students where they kind of come in and they say, you know, I'm just not into it. I'm not into the blues, and I find that really difficult to understand because it's so varied. I don't know. Do you have any kind of clever ways to get people kind of ease them into blues?
Yeah, you know what? That's actually a cool. And one thing I've learned as a teacher, because one mistake I used to make as a teacher early on was, you know, students would say, "Give me a list of certain players to listen to," and I'd be like, "Okay, well, I'd give them all my favorites. You know,
Hmm.
I give them Paul DeLay, Norton Buffalo, and Little Walter, Big Walter, you know, all those. But you know what we as a teacher, you often forget is that, oh, wait a minute, this stuff is probably a little too advanced to show a beginner,
Yeah.
right? I don't mean that in an offensive way or whatever. It's just, you know, it's like if you were learning blues guitar and they said, oh, well, you should check out Derek Trucks or you should check out Joe Satriani or, you
Yeah.
know, somebody that's like way up there. And, you know, so that can be a little bit discouraging to the student.
Hmm.
Um, you know, some students will view it as a challenge and go, "Cool, yeah, you know, I'll work to that." And some students will go, "Screw that."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've learned is, so I always get my students to start listening to guys like Jimmy Reed, um, also, you know, Sonny Boy Williamson #1, maybe Sonny Boy Williamson II a little later on. But basically, the point is, you know, you want to start with stuff that's, I don't want to say easier because it's not really easier because, you know, there's you know, there's so much depth to everything, you know. So, but I guess more accessible is
Hmm.
the term that I'm looking for. So I always say, you know, start with Jimmy Reed and you know, folks like that, because then you'll be able to kind of emulate or mimic their sound a little better, you know, or a
Hmm.
little easier. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that's one thing I've definitely learned is, you know, don't don't introduce you know, scary good players right away because that could be discouraging. But so I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
It,
yeah,
it, it
there
makes
it
it
is.
makes so much sense, and yeah, you've kind of hit it in a nutshell. And I think you might have kind of listed some players that it's maybe more about the songs. You know, it's not necessarily
Exactly.
about the harmonica. It's a song which has harmonica in it, and like Jimmy Reed's a great example of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a way better wording of it. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. It's like, yeah, there's more of a message there, and you're right. It's about the lyrics, and that's the other thing I try to tell my students too. It's that you know, at the first listen, if you're not really like paying close attention, if you're just listening on the surface, you might go, oh, okay, that's some, you know, some pretty basic stuff. But if you really sit down and listen to it, you'll go, oh, these are cool lyrics. You know, there's a hook and they're just great songs. You
Yeah.
know, if you're into songwriting, you will definitely appreciate Jimmy Reed. You know, because a lot of cool stuff, and also he on occasion would branch off of the 12 bar blues format, and he
Hmm.
would do you know, like different things, like Eldorado Cadillac, also known as If I Ain't Got You. That's got those cool little breaks in it, and it goes to the 5 at a different time or something like that. But cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm not going to talk tons about the C word at the moment, but I'm kind of intrigued what it's looking like there, because I think so we're recording this on the 25th of June, and we've just been told that non-essential kind of shops are being opened slowly from the 29th of June, but up until now we've not really been allowed out apart from a bit of exercise and to go shopping for supplies and things. What's it like where you are?
Essentially the same. It's kind of fun, especially in Oregon. It's really interesting. Places are starting to open up again, but it's funny because a lot of people are still saying, "Well, stay at home," but places are open again. But you should still stay home. You know?
That's super clear.
I know. But I actually played a gig for the first time. Let's see. Not last weekend before last. All the weekends blend together, so it's hard to keep track of. And it was at a casino, and so that was an interesting experience because right when you go into the casino, they take your temperature. You stand in front of a little camera screen that takes your temperature, and you have to wear a mask when you're on the gaming floor. Don't have to wear a mask when you're eating, drinking, or smoking. So there's that. I know. And you don't have to wear a mask when you're performing too. But they did have you've ever seen those clear plexiglass drum shields? Yep, they had one of those in front of the stage, which actually was kind of comforting. So that it was nice to play again, but it was also very surreal and just very eye-opening experience. It was good, like I say, good to play again, but also part of me was like, oh boy, this is different. And also that prior week there was a huge outbreak, probably about 20 miles away from the casino. Well, about 30, whatever. And there was like 125 new cases or something like that. So we were especially stressed a little bit. But so there's that. Yeah. So, but there's been a lot of spikes. You know, there's a lot of spikes in the disease that are a bit concerning. So it's interesting. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I mean, I haven't been in the same room with my band in 4 months, and like we've tried doing all the online kind of jamming software, and the latency is just too big. So you can't get any kind of feel happening. So I think we're all kind of itchy to be in a room together, but we still can't do that. That's still not something that's been allowed. I mean, obviously we could if we were being throwing caution to the wind, but it's kind of strange. But I saw that you were doing some online gigs. How did that go?
Oh yeah, those were a lot of fun. Yeah, those were out at my parents' house actually, and that was my dad joining me on the guitar on the last one. The first one we did as a trio, and it was my dad on bass and our guitar player Ken Luker. So shout out you guys if you're listening. But those were a lot of fun. People were very generous. So thank you to everybody that chipped in. That was very cool. Very nice of you. So yeah, we liked them. We plan on doing them again here and there. We don't want to do them too much because we want to still be safe in the process. So, but so stay tuned for that. We'll probably do a couple more here and there. It's been tricky, because our drummer actually passed away. Let's see, about a month or two ago now, and so that's been difficult. Not COVID related, but other health issues and stuff. So that was pretty sad, and that's been a bit of a bump in the road. So we're pretty much just performing as a duo and a trio at the moment. We haven't really thought about that part yet. But as it's the musical life has a lot of bumps in the roads, and we get through them somehow.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your drummer. That's not a good thing to go through.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just like losing a family member because yeah, band, as you well know, it's like band members become good friends and colleagues, but they also you get like a family like bond, especially when you work with them for a long time. So yeah, it's but like I say, we overcome somehow.
Yeah,
But
it's
here it
true.
is. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I had a very serious conversation with my girlfriend, now wife, early on in our relationship, explaining, the kind of the important relationships in my life that she would be competing with, including musicians and band members and instruments sometimes.
Yes, instruments is the big one. Yeah.
So was lockdown an opportunity to work on some new stuff, any new projects or practice?
Yeah, a little bit, a lot of like all of the above. Actually, it's been a blessing in disguise in many ways. I've been teaching a lot, teaching through Zoom mostly, and that's been really cool. I've been not only teaching harmonica too, but I've been teaching some other stuff. The drum, I'm teaching drum lesson. That's probably the most challenging because you can't really play together.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit weird, excuse me. But been kind of, as far as harmonica practice goes, been working on little things that probably like only I care about. Like, just as a quick little demo, like been working on tongue blocking single holes, but and I've always done that in certain ways, like like some of the runs I use are pretty much all tongue blocking, but some of the things like things like that I've always pretty much done puckering or
Hmm.
lip pursing, whatever you want to call it. So I've been working on doing little licks like that, but only tongue blocking, just to, just for fun. Because what I found, like, I have weird tendencies as a teacher and or no as a player, and that's what I was going to say is like as a teacher I try not to because you notice I play upside down.
Yep.
That's the one thing. Yeah, I play backwards. Yeah,
We're
it's
going to
because I
talk
started
about
when I was
that.
yeah. So, but anyway, so like I have a tendency to pucker when I'm going up, when I'm ascending, but when I'm descending, I tend to tongue block. I don't know why, but so I was puckering on the way up, tongue block on the way down. But anyway, so just like little things like that, and of course, been working on the chromatic a little bit here and there too, and yeah, just a little bit of everything. I I don't think I have ADD, but I'm pretty sure I do. Because I have a tendency to practice one thing and then I'll kind of, wander and then I'll eventually work my way back to it. But yeah, so.
But like, don't you think that that's an important part of practice? There's kind of deep dive, and then you put it down for a while, and your subconscious lets it percolate for a while, and then you come back to it, and like, oh, I'm doing this now. This is part of my playing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that's important because, well, everybody's different as far as learning and practicing. Some people really like to sit down and practice for hours, just nonstop, just boom, 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 crank it out. I'm one of those folks that likes to practice for short chunks here and there, and then either take a break, walk around, do some chores or whatever, or switch instruments, or things like that. Because you're right, it just like when you take a step back, you start to think about it, and like it's not sometimes a bad thing to think about what you're doing while you're doing it as far as playing an instrument.
Hmm.
You can think while you're practicing, but when you're on stage, it's probably not a good idea to think so much,
Nope.
yeah. And I actually do a similar thing when I'm recording too. Oftentimes when I'm in the studio, I do a lot of pacing, and sometimes I'll be listening back to a mix and I'll just kind of walk out of the room. And it's funny because a couple times people thought like, where the hell is he going? Dude, come back. No. No, it's just part of my process because like sometimes if I'll listen to the mix up close, and then like I'll take kind of like a lap around because sometimes if you listen to something far away, it leaves room to think about it
Hmm.
differently. I don't know. It's just it's good to kind of take a step back and then come back to it, you know.
Oh,
So
definitely, definitely. I mean,
mhm.
there's a massive level of fatigue, especially in the studio. Like especially if you've been sitting there with cans on, and you've done 20 takes of the same solo, and realistically the best take was take three, and everything else was a waste of time. But you feel like you've got to keep going until it gets better, and you just get drained.
Yes, yeah. See, and this is where we should probably talk to Rob Paparozzi more about this because he's he's in a studio like almost every day, and he's got all sorts of great tips on what to do in the studio, how to get prepared and stuff like that. But yeah, headphones in the studio, that's like a whole subject of itself. Really is like especially as a harmonica player, so those of you that are listening that are new to recording in the studio playing harmonica, um, you'll find that with headphones in, you're not going to get quite the same read of your tone, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense. Yeah, because with headphones in, especially like the ones I'm wearing earbud ones right now. So those tend to work as kind of an ear plug,
Hmm.
and so you get this kind of muffly kind of sound, and you can hear spit sounds and stuff. It's kind of gross, but anyway. So so you might try recording with one out, or one trick I like to use if I'm using can style. I like I put one halfway on,
Hmm.
so I got like leaving my room for my ear a little bit, and have one fully on. So that's just something to kind of because I've met a couple of harp players that were like, gosh, I was recording for the first time and I thought my sound sucked, and first time I recorded, I thought that too because it's different,
Hmm.
it's not like getting on stage and cranking it up and just blaring, you have to kind of approach it a little differently.
Hmm.
So anyway, I didn't mean to rant on that one too, but
It's true. It's a different art, most definitely. Cool. So you've already mentioned a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get to. So we'll come back to some things that you've mentioned. But I kind of want to get to the origin story, and kind of see how you got started, because I know that you come from a musical family, don't you? What was the environment like?
yeah, it was great. I'm an only child, so it was. I guess that's nice, but I did miss having a brother or sister at times, but I always had dogs and cats, so
Hmm.
I mean that worked. But yeah, no, but so my mom and dad were always in bands. In fact, they're high school sweethearts, so they've been in bands like ever since high school, essentially. But so when I was born in '88. They were in a band. In fact, my mom would perform on stage when she was pregnant with me. So I'm pretty sure that had something to do with that, with
Hmm.
my music stuff. But so anyway, skip ahead a little bit. I'm about 8 years old, and I hadn't really picked up an instrument yet. I tried a little bit of guitar, couldn't get to work. Always wanted to play a little guitar, and then I wanted to play violin or fiddle at first, but couldn't get my hands on one. And then, so a family friend, his name is Dino Alba. I mentioned him in another interview. So, hi, Dino. And he actually came over to a rehearsal for my parents' band, and he had harmonicas. And that was the first time I'd ever heard a harmonica. And I just was blown away of just how loud and what a big sound. It was such a little instrument. I was like, that's cool. I want that. And so I may have pilfered a couple of his harmonicas. Sorry, Dino. But he had left them there. That was the
Hmm.
funniest thing is that he had left them there. And as a little kid, you don't really think about sharing harmonicas or anything like that. So, but I remember just picking one up, and I think the first thing I did was just a little bend or thing like
Hmm.
that because I kind of listened to Dino and I just kind of could hear. I don't know why. I just could kind of hear how he was shaping his air when he was playing and stuff like that. So that kind of gave me an idea of what to do.
Hmm.
But I remember he eventually he caved and he gave me a couple harmonicas. He gave me a Wong Star Performer in the key of G sharp. That was
Wow.
my very first harmonica. Yeah. And so that was that. And then eventually he gave me like, I think, a Marine Band in the key of B flat and a couple other keys, so over time I started acquiring them. But so then skip ahead a little bit. My parents, their drummer, his name was Willie Weber, and he was excellent mentor in my life. And he actually played with Junior Walker in the All Stars a few times. Also, he played with the Coasters. Actually, I think he had a short stint in the band, later incarnation of the Coasters. So that was really cool. And he was a blind guy, but he preferred the term non-sighted. He did not like the word blind. That was always the thing I found interesting and very respectable about him. He just, anytime you hear the word blind, be like, oh, we prefer the term non-sighted, my friend. And so it was cool. I just, getting to kind of guide him around, and at a young age, it was nice. Kind of made me appreciate certain things and just think about life differently. But anyway, he was the one who turned me on to my heroes. He would give me mixtapes every week. He would come down from Portland, Oregon, and he would ride the Greyhound bus down to Eugene. We'd pick him up, and he'd always have different CDs and tapes for me. And so that was my education on harmonica, was just listening to all those tapes over and over again and mimicking, just certain licks, that's what got the harmonica going. And then when I got into the school band, I didn't really want to learn how to read music or anything. I'm interested in that stuff now. That's another thing I'm working on during these quarantine days. So I figured, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll play drums. So that's what kind of started the other part of the journey. The other instruments was picking up the drums and doing a little bit of that and stuff. So then eventually picking up other stuff. But anyway, yeah.
That's very cool. So you were starting with diatonic at the beginning. When did you get into chromatic? Was that quite a bit later?
Yeah, I would say it was probably about probably a good 3 or 4 years later. Well, I'd say like maybe 2 or 3 years later, I'd gotten my first chromatic from Willie. Willie had given me, he's like, oh yeah, I got one. I'll give one to you. And he surprised me one day. He's like, here. It was one of the 10-hole, not the Coke ones, but the Hohner Chromatica 10-hole one. I can't remember the model. But yeah, and so that was fun. And I remember, so just, yeah, that was kind of what started that. And then when I started really listening to Norton Buffalo and Paul DeLay more in depth, and also I heard Stevie Wonder about this time too. So that's when I kind of realized, okay, this is a bit of a different instrument, kind of. I mean, it's very much a harmonica, and there's a lot of similarities, believe it or not, to the diatonic, but there's quite a few differences. So that's when I started to kind of realize that. And also I also realized, oh, maybe I should save up and actually get some decent chromatics, because I was playing on the Chrometas and stuff like that, and they weren't that great. I'd blow them out within a month or so. So yeah, but that's kind of what started the chromatic. It was just, yeah, a couple of years later, and it just, yeah, the chromatic takes a little bit longer to click than the diatonic. It's not quite as free. The diatonic, you can, pretty much just breathe in and out, or you can pull, you can really pull on a note, smack it, but on a chromatic, you can't quite smack, because if you do, it'll go away. So you have to kind of ease into each note. So it's a certain kind of, like very much like singing in the, above the Adam's apple, that part of the throat. But what's cool though is like once you get used to all of that, that tone can actually improve your diatonic playing. So it's kind of cool, but sorry, getting ahead of myself once again.
No, no, don't be sorry. This is great, and it's kind of funny that you say that it kind of takes a while for chromatic to click. I literally started playing chromatic about a month ago because I spent so long just being like, oh no, I'm a diatonic player, as if that was an excuse, and then I was talking to more and more people. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember who it was. It was Shane Sager or Winslow Yerkes or one of those guys who was just like, it's another part of the harmonica. It's not a whole different instrument per se. It's something else you should have in your repertoire. And I got a lesson with Shane. That's my first lesson on chromatic.
Awesome.
And I said, well, this is where I'm going to pass on a compliment. So I asked who I should be listening to, and it's like, oh well, obviously Stevie and Toots, and you should really be listening to Hank Shreve as well. So that's how I discovered you, and he was right.
Well, thank you, Shane. Thank you, Shane. I love you, man. I really appreciate Shane. He's a killer player too, and I'm really proud to see what he's done, in the last couple of years in his career too. So yeah, right on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's cool. Thank you, Shane.
No, not at all. So yeah, it's so I kind of came to you thinking, oh, Hank's a superstar chromatic player, and then there's all this other stuff. And I'm kind of amazed at how you can play keyboard, lap steel, guitar, drums. I'm sure I've missed stuff. Is there stuff I've missed that you play?
I mean, that's pretty much it, actually. I mean, I do play guitar too, mostly at home, and like on some of my records, I play a little bit of guitar here and there. I also do a little bit of ukulele, from on occasion. And I'm working on getting a banjo. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know how that goes. But no, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not much of a bass player. My dad is the bass player, and he's so good at it, and he's just like a pro. So it's a bit intimidating for me to pick up a bass. I mean, I got a couple little cool slap licks, bake, Seinfeld style.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I've tried playing saxophone. I've tried playing trumpet and trombone. I've always loved those instruments, particularly trombone. I've always, I don't know why, I just love low sounding horns. Like I like baritone saxophone, and I even like bass saxophone. The bass sax is really cool too. You don't see them too often, but they're out there. But I love those horns. The embouchure is just so different, though. That's what really turned me off trying to approach a horn. It's just because with the harmonica, your mouth is over the instrument, or the instrument is in your mouth, which, is like a saxophone, sure, but, it's an awkward feeling, so I couldn't get used to that. Same with trumpet and brass instruments. I kind of felt, ooh, this, starting this late, it could almost, it might ruin my embouchure for harmonica. And so I don't know, because there's a lot of players out there that do play both brass instruments and harmonica. They do exist. So, I mean, but it's just like, because I've played a certain way for so long, I just don't, I'm scared.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a few students who have come to harmonica from saxophone, oboe, and there's definitely a difficulty in transitioning from an instrument where you might need to be quite forceful to get a sound out of it, to an instrument where you kind of need to go completely the opposite, and work on finesse. But I think the musicality trumps everything. So if they've come from another instrument, that's always going to be really useful. But yeah, the thing I wanted to ask is how do you find time to work on all these instruments? Because I play guitar and harmonica, and I've just started learning keyboard, but guitar and harmonica feels like a full-time job in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you fit it in?
Very carefully.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just kind of like I was mentioning earlier, I do a little bit on one instrument, and then I'll tend to wander. And also, I've always kind of been like this, but I go through phases, just like, with TV shows and food, and I'm really like that with instruments too. Like, let's see, probably about, I'd say 10 years ago, I really got bit with the Hammond organ bug. I still am obsessed with the Hammond organ. In fact, I have a Leslie right here. Can't see it, but it's right over there. Yeah,
Jealous.
no, yeah. But yeah, because like I've always loved that sound on recordings and stuff like that, but I never forget the first time I got to be up close to like the Leslie speaker, excuse me, and see what it actually does, and feel the sound moving, and I was like, oh damn. And so that's also when I realized, wow, there's a lot of similarities between blues harp, particularly blues harp, and that tone and the Hammond B3 sound, because the organ, as some of us know, it's like it came from the pipe organ, which also eventually stemmed the idea of the harmonica too. So they're kind of in the same family, kind of. I mean, in a way, distant relatives, but they're related to each other. But anyway, so I went through like this huge phase of playing Hammond B3, getting obsessed with the sound. I went through a period where I didn't even like playing piano anymore, and so I kind of put that on the back burner. But I'll tell you what, recently though, in the last probably 3 years, I've really gotten back into playing piano. And so I've been, I still play a lot of organ, don't worry, but I've really just kind of like really embraced piano, and kind of just really gotten back into that and stuff like that. So it's about like, that's, to answer your question, it's like going through phases. Sometimes I'll be in a really heavy, this phase or that phase, and that's how I am with my harmonica playing too, and my practice. I'll go through a really heavy little Walter phase, or I'll go through a really heavy this or that. So it's I'm just a hot mess.
I think it's really useful for people to hear this though, because I always try and liken any musical instrument to a relationship, because I don't know about you, but I get students all the time who's like, why aren't I good now? And why is this taking so long? And they've been playing for 3 months, and I was like, no, this is like, when you met your significant other, you didn't think, why aren't we married right now? Why haven't we? It's a long-term process, and it's a long relationship, and there are ups and downs, and sometimes it's not the most important thing in your eyes at that time, and that's fine, and it helps to relax with it. I find. I'm super jealous though of B3, so I'm a massive Jimmy Smith fan. Do you do pedals and everything?
No pedals. I don't own any, and they also scare me.
Yeah.
But I've tried. And in fact, I actually don't own a Hammond at the moment. I do own a Leslie, but I'm using a Nord Electro, and those things are killer. They're about they weigh so much less, and they take up a lot less room. And they really Nord did a really good job of nailing that sound, in my opinion. I just really like them. But no, I've tried the foot pedals a few times. Tell you what, though, the guy that I also play with a lot, too, his name is Skip Jones. So hi, Skip, if you're listening out there. Skip's a killer. He's a rare breed because he's not only a really good blues and New Orleans style piano player, but he's also a killer B3 player. And that's kind of a thing you probably noticed, is that a lot of keyboard players are either piano players or electric piano players or organ players. There's very few that actually do both. The way people feel it should. I don't know. Lost my train of thought there, but but Skip though, he is kind of he is a master at the foot pedals, and he'll do kind of like he comes more from the Jimmy McGriff and Jack McDuff school. So he tends to go for more of that gritty kind of tone, That's why I like Jimmy Smith, though. Jimmy Smith tended to use more of a cleaner sound, which was cool. But anyway, yeah. So I I get to watch him do it sometimes,
Yeah.
and I get some tips from him. But yeah, I'll come back to that one someday. But
Yeah.
now is not the
I mean,
time.
I feel like half the battle of B3 is being strong enough to move it from gig to gig and having the right kind of transportation to carry that and a Leslie. That's kind of half the battle right there.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I was in a band for a while where I was, lugging around my keyboard stuff, and I got a hold of this Leslie pedal, and I actually, I remember because we went through a phase where I really wasn't playing keyboard much. I was playing keyboard maybe on a couple songs here and there, and then I got this Leslie pedal, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to emulate some of my keyboard parts on the harmonica. It won't be the same, but I mean, it'll be something. So I eventually kind of started getting away with doing that. Just like I eventually stopped bringing the keyboard and just played through the Leslie pedal for
Mm,
certain songs, and it was cool.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely a cool effect to add to your pedal board. Those of you out there that use pedals for your harp is a really good chorus sound or a really good Leslie simulator, because chorus and Leslie sims are different. Leslie sims are thicker,
Hmm.
because keep in mind, they're trying to emulate sound moving, the Doppler effect. So, you're going to get, because chorus sounds are a little bit more wavy in pitch, which is cool, but it's not quite a Leslie sound though. So anyway, just throwing that out there for those of you who are curious about sound effects and stuff like that.
Well, I did notice that you sometimes go very affected, which I really like, and I wanted to ask you kind of what pedals. Let's get geeky about this. What exactly are you
Cool.
using on the floor?
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny. For probably about the last 6+ years, I've been using a Roland Cube. And
Nice.
I mentioned it a couple of times in my other videos, but I'm a tube amp guy. I really love tube. I've always have. I started playing on solid state amps just because that's what was in the house, and you got to start somewhere. But eventually, I made the switch to tube amps, and I haven't really looked back. I've tried some of the other solid state amp, like I'm not bad mouthing Quilter because Quilter is an amazing company. They make good amps. For me, though, they didn't quite work. I found them a little harsh sounding, a little just too much, a little in your face. But keep in mind, this was at the NAMM show, and also I also tried them one like very briefly before a gig, so I didn't really get a chance to really
Hmm.
dig in. But my first impression was a little harsh. But anyway, so there's a couple other solid state amps that are designed to sound like a tube, but
Hmm.
they don't really do a good job. But so I came across this Roland Cube, and it was actually my previous guitar player, Stan Welsh. He actually came to the gig, and I was playing through a Blues Deluxe at the time that I, modded and souped up and stuff. Pretty good amp. And he goes, "Well, hey, I got this Roland Cube, and I got it a while ago, and I just haven't used it." And so we wound up trading, actually, just doing a straight trade. And I tell you what, man, this Roland Cube really breaks up well. Sad though, they don't actually make this model anymore, but it's called the Cube 80GX.
Okay.
I think it's either Cube 80GX or GX80, something.
Uh-huh.
I get them mixed up sometimes. But yeah, so and if I believe it's actually 80 watts, so it's pretty powerful, and it's got 112, single 12. Um, and I play pretty much through the clean channel,
Hmm.
and it because it's got post volume and it's got master volume, so I'm able to dial in a good amount of dirt. And I'm using the Bulletini a lot these days too, so that helps with breakup and things like that. But as far as effects go, that's the other thing that I like about the amp. It has onboard effects that are all good.
Nice.
So I've been using. I wish I had it with me. I would plug it in, but it's also kind of early, and I don't want to make my
That's fair.
mad.
That's fair.
Yeah, but it's got two kinds of delay on it. It's got warm and clear. It's called, or clean. And the warm is nice because it makes the repeat sounds not a little bit more darker.
Okay.
So when you use the clean delay, it makes the repeats kind of very crispy and just
Hmm.
more like your actual signal, so to
Yeah.
speak. So I tend to go for the warm one a little bit more, and it's got a tap tempo, which is very cool. Tap tempo, I think, it's one of those things. It's like when you start using it, it's hard to go back because you can dial in whatever style delay you want. You know, if you want slapback, you just go tap tap, and you got it. If you want a long, trippy, spacious delay, then you just go tap tap, or you can tap it to a rhythm. So if you're playing in a reggae band, uh, you'll definitely want this because you can tap it to like the offbeat because reggae's, it's all about the offbeats, right?
Hmm.
Tap, 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 tap. So you can tap to that rhythm, or you could tap to, the answer to that. So that's a cool thing also. So move on ahead a little bit, sorry, and then we got the other effects, like there's chorus, good chorus, there's phaser, and there's flange. I don't really use the flange too much. And then there's the octave. So out of all those, I tend to use the octave sound the most. And the only unfortunate thing is that you only get one octave sound out of it, and it just gives you one octave below. But
Hmm.
honestly, I'm a pretty low tech guy, so it works for me. The other bummer too is that you can't run certain effects at the same time. You can't run the chorus and the octave at the same time,
Hmm.
but you can run the delay and the octave at the same time. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, I like this octave too because you can actually play chords and it picks up all the notes at the same time.
Wow. Okay, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Because I remember when I first got into octave pedals, I started with the Boss Super Octave, the brown one.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah, it was cool for a moment because you have a couple of extra options, but the moment you play a double stop or a chord or what have you, or even a low note, it just kind of goes, and it's because it's searching. It can't find that
Hmm.
note. Yeah. So, but this cube though, I like because it recognizes all the notes. It's really cool. But yeah, man, that's pretty much what I'm using. And then so I pretty much take that to every gig, and what I'll do is I'll pair that with whatever backline amp there is.
Hmm.
So I get a nice spread, and um, I'll ask the sound person to mic the cube, so that way that's the signal that's actually going out through the mains. So that way the effects are being captured out front as well. So,
Nice.
but yeah, that's pretty much it for as far as effects goes.
Uh-huh. Well, that's great though, and I like that you're using a Roland cube. I've actually managed to destroy a Roland cube, which I think is virtually unheard of. But I'm like, you don't want to buy gear from me because you know that it has been treated like absolute crap for its entire life. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was still working, but it had holes in the speaker cone, and like the chassis was falling apart. And then I got another cube, and that was great as well. So I'm a big fan too, and it's nice to hear people using probably a much more practical option because I think a lot of players hear that a bassman sounds great, and yes, it does. But how often do you get to crank a bassman to the volume that it sounds great at?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just you reach a point where that, and actually I had a basement for a long time too, and I that was one of the turning points. That same exact thought. I was just like, I only use this maybe once every few weeks, or if that. And it's like if you go to festivals, they'll probably have that amp for you or an amp just like it, and so yeah, it just gets to a point where, and I have a bad back for my age anyways. So yeah, that's the other bonus that I like about the cube. It's literally like this big. It's still pretty heavy, but
Uh,
um, it takes up less room in the car, and it saves room for the other crap that I have to bring, my keyboards and my lap steel and all that mess. But yeah.
Oh man, I think that the bad back is probably musicians' back as much as anything else. So it's
Yep.
part of the the lifestyle. Yeah, so I wanted to, that I've got so many things I want to chat to you about. I might actually have to ask you for a round two if you're keen at some point, because I don't want to take up too much of your time.
That's all
But
good.
I want to chat just a little bit about Chromatic, because I'm starting to get really excited about it for the first time ever. I never really got it until very recently. And well, I want to ask a little bit just about how you play, and then I want some tips. I'm going to use you basically. But you play upside down. Do you play Chromatic upside down as well?
I do, yeah, and that it's a weird thing, and it's a thing that if I think about that, just that it really like confuses me, my own self, like just because I play keyboards, and it's
Hmm.
just something I don't really think about, but when I do, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I've been doing this wrong. Ah, forget it, forget it, forget it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's a weird muscle memory thing, but yeah, I've always that's like I said, I was 8 years old when I picked up harmonica, and I was probably about, I guess, maybe 11 or 12 or so when I got serious about chromatic. And so I just kind of stayed that way. Yeah. But I'm still just, I'm still thinking about like, okay, I'm going up, I'm ascending or I'm descending, So, and you know what it is? It's pretty much just like guitar players who play left-handed, but they leave the strings in the standard order.
Yeah,
Like I think Albert King did that.
yeah.
A couple other famous guitar players did
Doyle
that. I
Bramhall.
think yes, Doyle Bramhall, yes, and I think Hendrix actually played that way at first. I think he switched
I
eventually,
think
but
Hendrix could jump between the two just to show off.
you know what? Actually, you're right. Yes, I did. I do remember reading that somewhere. Yeah. So I mean, it's and I've seen actually some like Deak Harp. I love Deak. He does the cool trick where he'll be playing and he flips like mid while he's, I
Uh-huh.
can't quite, but he's like, and he just like keeps turning it while he's playing. It's pretty cool. But yeah. So yeah, chromatic, man. As far as getting started, I always suggest third position. So if you're getting into third position on diatonic, chromatic, it's probably a perfect time to start chromatic. Because I think jumping right into cross harp on chromatic and even first position, they're a little weird. Like, because one thing I want to get out there right away, and I've mentioned this before, but so if we take if I can find the damn thing, there it is. So if we take, one thing you might try too is getting your C diatonic and your C chromatic and just, putting them, next to each other and just doing a bunch of back and forth. Um, One thing you'll notice right off the bat on a diatonic C, we have a G note, right?
Hmm.
Two draw. That's like our home note. We do not have that note on chromatic. That note is just totally missing. However, on diatonic how you got two draw and you also have three blow is the same note? Well, you got the three blow on chromatic. So you got that note. So one thing you have to realize if you're playing cross harp on the chromatic, your root note is a blow note, only a blow note. So just that takes a little bit of getting used to. So that's why I always say third position is probably a little better, a little bit more user friendly because there's more draw notes
Hmm.
and it's a little bit more familiar. It's familiar air, familiar, all that kind of stuff. So blues scale. Blues scale is always a good place to start. As far as like what chromatics I like to use, I suggest, I mean, the 16 holes are pretty and they look cool in pictures and stuff like that, and they're shiny, but I suggest getting a 12 hole. Because if you're playing third position, your root's going to be at the very bottom. So hole number one, draw. I use a 14 hole for different reasons. I'll get into that a little later, but yeah. And actually, what you do too is don't even use the button. Try to get as sweet of a sound, and also just try to get, as bluesy of a sound, I guess, without using the button. So maybe start with like the Pentatonic Minor. actually. So if I tab that out for those of you at home, which is everyone, we have we have one draw, two draw, three blow, three draw, four blow, five draw. So you notice the whole numbers kind of are a little bit different too, but that's okay. We'll get into that later. But now, so even without adding the button in, you can kind of add that flattened fifth in there too. Quick side note too, you can actually play a chromatic scale kind of without using the button. It's a little ugly sounding, but it can be done. Anyway, so getting ahead of myself, but so now, yeah, so adding like a little bit of a dip bend in order to get that flat fifth. Now that leads us to the next step, the button. So you'll find that, you know, button makes the notes go up. So just for those of you tapping this out, that's 3-hole blow button in. You really don't even need to finish the scale, actually, because that lick, you'll find a lot of cool licks just in that part. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, then, you know, adding it into the full scale. And if you wanted to, you can, so when you come to that, what is that, 4 blow? Yeah, so that would be the flat seventh degree. You can actually get that same note by going 4 draw button in. So some of you are going, well, so what? I can already get that note by just blowing what, you know. But here's the thing. You can go. You get that little bling, little kind of glissando effect or whatever you call them. So. So just little things like that. How am I doing? Am I going on too long, or is this okay?
No. This is really great. And yeah, the third position thing, I think is a great way to get started and get excited about chromatic, because it's just it's instantly super fun. And one thing that I've noticed, which might help people listening at home with the kind of muscle memory idea, is if you think about your third position scale, starting in the middle octave on a diatonic, you've got exactly the same kind of note order in terms of draws and blows and whole jumping. So it'll feel natural playing minor pentatonic between the two instruments.
Yes.
But the thing that's cool is then doing the octaves and getting that huge sound, which is why I started trying to play chromatic. I was toying with the idea after watching Rick Estrin live here in Edinburgh, and just hearing that huge sound through it was probably a Fender Bassman, and it was just obscene. It was just so big.
Yeah.
So what would be what was kind of the next step if someone's been playing around a little bit with third position and that kind of minor blues feel? Where would you go from there?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, there's so many cool minor licks you can do. It gets like you just run into this whole huge just book of licks. And so like the next step, if you want to, like, you know, if you're doing that minor stuff, if you do a button in and you pretty much play a lot of the same kind of stuff, put puts you in E flat. Now, I know E flat is an unusual key. Not a lot of folks playing E flat, but though it's a really cool key. And there's a lot of cool kind of like hack things, I guess you can do, or just little tricks, I guess, you know. That was just all draw notes, and I'm just going button in, button out, button in. See, for me, I could do that for probably about an hour easily. Just like it's just very satisfying, you know. That's just it. There's other ones too. Little snake charmer kind of scales and things like that. So, but skipping ahead a little bit, the next step is to really get into major playing. That is a thing that is often overlooked in blues chromatic. There, I said it. There's a lot of exceptions, like for instance, Rick Estrin does some really cool, I can't remember the name of the song. It's not on a Nightcats album, but it's on his solo album on the harp side, I think it is. There's a chromatic instrumental he does on there where he does a lot of really cool major style licks. I want to say it's called the Paper Bill or something like that. I probably have that wrong, but we'll get to that later. But once again, Norton Buffalo and Paul DeLay, they used a lot of major notes and a lot of pretty, I call it pretty playing or playing happy, you know, a lot of those kind of stuff. And also there's a lot of guys, Dennis Gruenling does a lot of cool stuff like that as well. There's also, trying to think, of course, Stevie Wonder, once again. Stevie Wonder played in some interesting positions, though, so you might find his stuff a little hard to replicate, but, you know, I'll get into that in a moment, too. But so major, so it's like as far as major goes. So going back to the blues scale for a second, or minor pentatonic. Good rule of thumb is if you know your root is draw 1, hole 1 draw, and you go up to hole 2, and you do that button in, so that hole 2 button in, boom, major third. Instantly, totally different vibe, you know, and it's just, and this is where I sometimes, because I love third position on diatonic, absolutely love it, but sometimes I'll want to use the chromatic for third position. That way I can get right to that major note, you know. So anyway, just long explanation short, you find your root for third position, so 1 draw wherever. So find that root, the next hole up, draw, button in is your major third. So you can do, like if you wanted to, those of you that like to work on arpeggios, also known as broken chords, you can go. So for tabbing purposes, that was 1 draw, 2 draw, button in, 3 draw, hop over to 5 draw, then 6 draw, button in, 7 draw, and then 9 draw, 10 draw, button in, 11 draw. Now what's cool is that if you accidentally hit that note in between, it's actually the 6th degree. And the 6th degree is a really great note for major playing. Something I actually forgot to mention when I was talking about minor a second ago. If you're playing minor, I would avoid that note. So that note right there, that's a B natural. And if we're in D, B is the 6th degree. And the 6th degree, this is up for debate, but for me, I really think the 6th degree is a note you should probably stay away from in a minor key. If you do use it, you can use it as a chord, you know. just for a little, little stabs and things like that. But it's not a note you want to hang on, Right? When you put that there, it's almost like, whoa, hang on, wait, I thought we were in minor. What happened? So anyway, avoid, if you're playing minor, avoid that note. But if you're playing major, it's gorgeous. So that's really, I would say, the next step is embracing the major, because even if you do it with, the octaves, whoops, hang on. You get more of that bebop vibe, because that's really what a lot of, talking about bebop scales and things like that, bebop is, either a blues scale or a major scale or a minor scale with, some chromatic passing tones in there. So that's kind of what you're doing. And anyway, yeah, I'd say that's next step is, getting into that major stuff, man. That's very overlooked. And, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's not bluesy enough. But, it depends on the song, and it depends. It really comes from listening. If the vocalist is singing something kind of sweetly, more on the major side, then I probably want to play more on the major side. You probably want to, try to match that a little bit. So anyway, there's that.
No, that's great. And I agree so strongly about the power of major over blues. Because for me, blues is all about, major, minor, butting heads. And that's what harmonic, like diatonic harmonica, is built for minor and major, that kind of jump between the octaves, which is just what makes a lot of that second position playing so tasty. And interestingly, I wanted to mention, because you were talking about that sixth, and students might be a little bit confused about, what's a sixth. What I would invite a diatonic player to do is to put on a minor backing track and play the two blow over it, and listen to whether that's a nice sound or not. If you think it's a nice sound, I would counsel you to maybe rethink, because I think that's where a lot of players have muscle memory around the nice major notes that work over a major blues, like the two blow, the clean three draw, and then as soon as they're put in a minor context, they've got all that muscle memory, and then they're confused why their second position playing doesn't work.
Yeah, I've actually run into that before. It was one of the harmonica camps. I can't remember when exactly, but we were doing like the open jam portion of it. And I was actually playing guitar for it. And so I was playing guitar, and different people would come up and, blow a couple of choruses. And we would kind of change throughout. So we started off with a shuffle and things like that. And then eventually it morphed to a rumba and things. And then this one person got up and said, let's do something in minor. I was like, sure. Yeah. So I started playing in minor, and they started going, and it's like, I had to switch back to major. I couldn't let it happen, So, yeah, and that's really it. Is just knowing which notes to stay away from in a minor key. And like you say, yeah, like two blow, like well, if you're in cross harp, that is, yeah. See, that's where we're getting into major territory. Yeah. By the way, some of my students out there listening will have heard me say this before, but if you're looking for a good ear trainer, as far as like minor, or a good training on the three-hole bend, spoonful lick is the absolute best answer for that. Because if you're hitting it in major, you'll know. Try that. Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, just ear train. That's where you kind of get more into the subject of ear training and just little what tools you could use for that and stuff. So But yeah, man, minor versus major, important stuff.
The age-old debate.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been an absolute delight, and I'm going to be twisting your arm for round two. I'm also going to be hitting you up for some lessons, because I want to go deeper on this chromatic thing. But before we call it a day, where can people find out about what you're working on? What do you want to promote?
Yeah, usually my website is we update that once every week or every couple weeks, and my mom actually does most of the work on that. Actually, all of the work there. So, hi, Mom. Thank you. My mom, Lori Shreve, and it's a family business, So,
Awesome.
and that's hankshreveband.com, and that's SHREVE, like Shreveport, and also Facebook is a good outlet for that. My personal page, which I believe is facebook.com hank.shreve, I think.
I'll find it and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, whatever my profile page is. But yeah, I can. I might be friended out at the moment, and I'm not sure. But you can always follow me, and you'll be able to see all the stuff. I'm also working on I haven't done it quite yet, but I'm working on building up my YouTube page. So be watching for that. I'm planning on posting some more stuff on there. But yeah, so usually, yeah, my regular website and my Facebook is a good place to see what I'm doing. So, and I also teach, for those of you local Eugene folks, I teach at a place called Music Masters, teaching online at the moment, of course. But yeah, Music Masters, and the website is musicmastersstudio.com. And teaching drums, harmonica, keyboard, lap steel, and guitar, all that stuff. I think that's it. I think that's it. I'll probably forget.
Awesome.
But
well, listen, I'm going to put all that stuff in the show notes, and I would highly, highly recommend following on Facebook, because Hank has been posting some awesome videos of him playing with other people or jamming, or it's all really entertaining, so worth checking out. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure for me. I like that we got super nerdy. That was fun.
You can always expect that from me. I know. Thank you so much for having me, Tomlin. It's been a huge honor. I've been a fan of yours for a while, and this has been really cool to connect for the first time. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!